Good morning. Can I ask everybody to take your seats and we'll get the program started this morning. Now that everybody's seated, can I ask everybody to stand for the presentation of the colors and the playing of the national anthem. Bernie, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. Susan, thank you.
Attention! Carry colors!
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, colors! Parade, rest!
You may be seated. I wanted to say thank you so much to the Excel High School ROTC Color Guard. Thank you. And the Boston University Band, wonderful national anthem. So much appreciated. Well, good morning. My name is Michael Creasey, and I'm the Superintendent of the National Parks of Boston. And on behalf of our co-hosts, the South Boston Citizens Association and the South Boston Allied War Veterans Council, we want to welcome you to Dorchester Heights Monument to commemorate the 246th anniversary of the British evacuation of Boston. Mayor Wu, Regional Director Vitsky, all of our elected officials, Excel High School students, South Boston Catholic Academy students and teachers, as well as St. Peter's Academy, and the many, many community organizations that support our parks and this monument. Welcome and thank you for being with us today. You know, as we gather to commemorate the events of Dorchester Heights 246 years ago, let us remember that the story of this area does not begin in 1776. This land was born witness to thousands of years of life, culture, and tradition. We recognize that we are currently standing on the unceded ancestral territory of the Massachusetts tribe. As the longtime stewards of this area, the Massachusetts have cared for this land for thousands of years and continue to do so today. The Massachusetts tribe historical and ongoing relationship with this land is integral to understanding the expansive story of Dorchester Heights. As we approach the 250th anniversary of the events at Dorchester Heights, we are reminded that the American Revolution remains unfinished. While the revolutionaries of March 1776 fought for their own vision of liberty and representation, every generation since, including our own, has continued to grapple with these fundamental principles. It is our shared responsibility to learn from the challenges and accomplishments so we can be more inclusive and honest in telling the stories of our past, while also better equipping ourselves to carry on their work. There is no better place to be inspired by the fortitude of everyday people that changed the course of history than this place we stand overlooking Boston Harbor and the city of Boston. Dorchester Heights is an extraordinary story and an extraordinary place with extraordinary people that we celebrate today. We have a really wonderful program today, and it has taken a lot of work from so many different people. But I would like to ask Tom McGrath, who's the president of the South Boston Citizens Association and co-host of today's event, to make his remarks. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm not going to try to teach you about Evacuation Day, but I do want to ask you to bow your head in a moment of silence for the people of Ukraine. Thank you. It's just amazing. 246 years ago, same type of situation in Ukraine. That's why I believe this holiday is very important. Glad that we have some new folks here, and maybe they could be educated to learn about this holiday where our freedom was born right here in South Boston. I'm just gonna thank the students who participate every year, St. Bridget's, South Boston Catholic Academy, St. Peter's. Thank you every year, over 300 essays and posters from those two schools alone. And I really want to thank the schools, thank the kids, because that's what it's all about. And happy Evacuation Day.
Let me now introduce you to one of our other co-hosts that has just a stalwart in this event, as well as just representing us, and it's State Senator Nick Collins.
Thank you, Michael, and to everyone at the Park Service. Can we celebrate $25 million being put into this park? I want to thank our congressional delegation. Congressman Lynch couldn't be here, but is ably represented by his team and family. I know this is an important day for him, particularly in the work that he's put in. We have, if you think about it, zillions of parks all over the United States, and they have maintenance, but to get this kind of money to invest in this park means that it's going to be in great shape for a long time to come. And this park is used by everybody across the community and some of the city. Some had their first dates here. Won't name names. But it's just an incredible day. If you think about it, same type of weather. 246 years ago, a group of people who were asked by somebody they really didn't know to take up arms. The trek from Fort Thomas, I mean, people have driven from Lake George. That's a tough drive. Imagine marching from Lake George, beyond Lake George, over a frozen lake with hundreds of thousands of pounds in artillery, knowing that you had people back home who, if you didn't get there, I mean, I'm late to things. Imagine getting late to this, is incredible. and I think that's why we celebrate this history, the difficulties, the risk, the things they had to put aside that were personal to do all this. And I think that's why we're here to celebrate today. Our veterans, our active military, who, as Tom pointed out, we had a moment of silence for the Ukraine. All over the world, people wish and hope for the things that we have, and I think we take for granted too often. So that's why I'm incredibly proud to celebrate here today. You know, I love these events because they bring this to life, bring the history to life, and why this event is so important. Our kids. It's all about them in the future, and the history, and reminding you, that's why we fight for it. That's why we're up here. That's why our congressman gets $25 million to make sure that this place is treated with respect, and it deserves that. You know, we have a lot of Irish Americans across the United States. We have cities that have, you know, probably as high a percentage, Greater Boston, anyone across the United States. We're the only one who celebrates St. Patrick's Day, a celebration of an immigrant class coming of age, religious freedom, and the ability to self-determination. So we're the only ones. So we have a special responsibility here, and this is what the Citizens Association is all about. So as a co-host of this with the Historical Society and President Tom McGrath, I just want to thank you for continuing this history. And it's why that, you know, this controversy that takes place around the length of the parade has always stood up. Nobody has successfully said, we're cutting this thing in half, for a reason. It's going to outlast all of us, this place. The symbol will be for the next generations to remember and commemorate. And that's why I support the parade route in its traditional form. And that's, you know, something that, you know, we're here remembering that history. We do that in the parade. And so I urge the council to reconsider. I know they're saying next year and this and that, and the police, who thought at the time, you know, with the pandemic in January, that was the right move. I disagree, and I wish that we make another decision. I love this town. I love its history. And it's worth fighting for. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Happy Evacuation.
I'd like to introduce our city councilor, who's such a major supporter and just a good friend, Michael Flaherty.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning. Happy Evacuation Day and happy St. Patrick's Day. No better place to celebrate this great holiday than in hallowed ground here up at Dorchester Heights. And I'm so excited to see so many young boys and girls that are here, reminiscent of when I was a kid. And Council Flynn came up here with our fathers. It was something that was sort of instilled in us as young men and women from this community to remember what happened here on this day. It was arguably the creation of our country, with the British had surrounded Boston Harbor, and from this very place, efforts and decisions were made that completely turned the trajectory, which led obviously to July 4th and the birth of our country. And so I know that there's a lot of young boys and girls here that participated in the essay and poster contest put forth by the Citizens Association. So I want to congratulate the winners, but also congratulate those that may not have won, but participated, and maybe they'll get a shot at winning next year. And to that end, I want to recognize Tommy McGrath and the South Boston Citizens Association, who do a great job putting on a month-long of events, and their predecessors, the late, great Mike Baer, the late, great Tommy Butler, Bernie O'Donnell, who is still alive, and I think he was here 246 years ago. And we rely on Bernie and Bernie's wisdom, along with my dad, Michael Flaherty Sr., and the late Jimmy Flaherty. Those are the folks that were advocating and fighting on behalf of this community, but in particular, making sure that we remembered this very special day. And one thing we take away from that day, which is very relevant to today, and what we're seeing overseas with our friends and allies with Ukraine, it's that freedom is not free. And they're paying an awful price right now for their freedom. And we're going to continue to stand with them. So when we're thinking about commemorating Evacuation Day, when we're thinking about that, we're thinking about those people and what they're going through right now. We stand with them. We're going to continue to support them. Our hope is that they'll be victorious, just like we were victorious right on these very special grounds. So all I can say to the young boys and girls that are here and the folks, keep coming. Come back every year. This is an important event that we want to make sure we continue to celebrate as a community and as a city. So with that, I want to wish you once again, from my family to yours, a very happy Evacuation Day and and a happy St. Patrick's Day. Good luck and God bless you all. And I also now have the pleasure of introducing my colleague on the City Council, our City Council President, who will also introduce our other council colleagues who are here today. Our good friend and neighbor, son of South Boston, City Council President Eddie Flynn.
Thank you, Michael, and I'm honored to be here with my colleagues in city government and state government as well. But I also want to recognize my city council colleagues that are here with us, Erin Murphy, Kenzie Block, and Ruthie Lejeune, all three do a tremendous job representing this community. I also want to recognize and thank a good friend of South Boston, but more importantly, a good friend of the veterans community across the city, Rob Santiago. Thank you, Rob. I want to thank the students from South Boston Excel High School, the JROTC program. They're a real credit to their family, a real credit to their school, and we're so proud of those students. They do a tremendous job. Thank you. Also want to say thank you to the students that are here today. The students from South Boston Catholic Academy, the students from St. Peter Academy. We're so proud of you, and you do a tremendous job working so hard in school and your various after-school activities as well. So thank you for being with us, and to the award recipients, congratulations as well. I will say briefly that we're standing here at the kind of the birthplace of freedom, of liberty in our country. In a short walk from here, we have the South Boston Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the first memorial in the country, where the men from South Boston were killed over in Vietnam fighting for us. So let us also take a moment and reflect on the heroic servicemen and women of this country that paid the supreme sacrifice for our nation. We think of our military and military families today, but every day. So just want to acknowledge our military families. And finally, I have the opportunity and the honor to introduce a former colleague of mine and of Councilor Flaherty as well. Someone who's done a tremendous job over the last year, especially during this very difficult period of time. And she works hard, she's honest, she's committed and dedicated to this city. I'd like to recognize and welcome Mayor Wu to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. Look, some of us thought we were doing a reenactment here, but I'm going to go fast so we can try not to evacuate anyone here today. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We are standing here in recognition of our American tradition, of what it means to stand up in the face of opposition, to stand up bravely in the face of heavy crosswinds, and to do what's right, to protect our communities, to bring people together. That's what we will continue to do, no matter what the noise is like. I do want to ask for space and quiet to be respectful and give respect to the history of this place. We are sitting today here, or standing here, on the very spot where the British evacuated Boston on March 17, 1776. Following their defeat at the hands of a much smaller force fighting under the command of General George Washington at Dorchester Heights, this battle ended the 11-month siege of Boston. Washington's troops used weapons captured at Fort Ticonderoga in New York, brought to Boston by Colonel Henry Knox, and after forcing General Howe and his troops to retreat, Washington set his sights on the HMS Renown, a British warship that kept watch over the harbor and prevented supplies from reaching Boston. Under the steady volley of Washington's cannons, under the troops that refused to give up,
the Renown was forced to retreat to open waters, reopening Boston Harbor and reconnecting our city to the rest of the colonies. 120 years ago today, we unveiled this monument to celebrate independence prevailing over tyranny. And it's appropriate that the hill where Washington drove the British from Boston and from New England should be a monument to freedom forevermore. So I'm so grateful to everyone here, the National Park Service, our local friends and administrators, Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, for this funding from the Great American Outdoors Act that will go to restore this important monument and park and reaffirm our commitment to freedom and democracy here and around the world. And this is especially fitting that it's here in South Boston, because Washington's victory against the British was just the beginning of a long, proud tradition of South Boston defending our country's freedom. In the almost 250 years since then, this community has seen countless parents, children, family members, siblings, and friends answer the call to serve our nation, many of whom gave their lives defending the freedoms we hold so dear. Today we honor them, we honor their families. We honor them through memorials and markers and hero squares. One of those markers not far from here is dedicated to Henry Knox, the Bostonian who led the expedition bringing arms and ammunition to supply General Washington in his battle against the British. His legacy and Washington's legacy live on today in the courage and patriotism that runs so strong here in South Boston and in our city. We are proud to nurture that legacy in our young people. And thank you again to the JROTC group from Excel High, who is joining us here and makes us proud every single day. We're proud of the many young people who are doing the important work of remembering and learning our history and making sure we pass that on. And so I want to say to our students here today, there are going to be times where you have to be brave. There's a lot going on in the world right now, but we are so proud of you. We are so excited for everything that you're learning now and doing now and being part of our community. And we can't wait to see you taking the lead, standing up here, serving as mayors and city councilors and congresspeople and state representatives and senators. And so we're just waiting for you to take over from us. So just as we come together every year to celebrate this historic victory in our battle for our independence, we must come together to celebrate independence wherever it's threatened anywhere. And so I echo the solidarity from my colleagues in saying that Boston stands in solidarity and support of Ukrainians here in our city and abroad as they struggle as we did nearly 250 years ago against oppression. Thank you all so much. I'm honored to represent you and honored to be here with you today. And it is my honor to pass this over to a colleague who has been representing us well, someone I'm so proud chairs the Boston delegation up at the State House, State Representative David Beal.
Good morning. I know we're in class with some students here. Good morning, everyone. There we go. It's an honor to be with you here today. Today is an important day as we commemorate Evacuation Day, an important day not just in our city's history, but also in our nation's history. On March 17th, 1776, occupying British forces evacuated Boston, which ended the 11-month siege and occupation of our city at the dawn of our revolution. This was the first major strategic victory for General Washington in the Continental Army and was accomplished by fortifying the heights on which we're all gathered here today. This was no singular undertaking, as Americans had to secretly fortify this area without attracting British attention. No small feat when you're working with cannons and armaments that weighed over 60 tons. To that end, General Henry Knox, who was only 25 years old at the time, transported the cannons from New York over 300 miles here to Boston on this very site. They used horse, sled, and boats. And as they approached the city, They even had the ingenuity to wrap the wheels in straw hay to avoid any kind of detection. And on March 4th, 800 soldiers and 1,200 workers and volunteers who didn't know each other came together, worked together, and strategically fortified these heights. And as you look around, you can see great views of the city of Boston, but the cannons' armaments were directed at Boston Harbor, where the British fleet was stationed. When the British awoke the next morning, they were absolutely shocked at what the dedicated American colonists had accomplished and left Boston on this date, 1776, without a shot being fired and without blood being shed. This set the foundation for our eventual victory in the American Revolution. And today's an important day for us to remember. It's great to see so many students here. I was a student. I remember coming to this as a child. And this is your classroom. This is our shared history. It's your history, and it's important that we come here every day to commemorate it and celebrate it. I can't remember seeing a crowd this big in ages, and I'm just so glad to see so many young people here. I appreciate the schools for making sure that our shared history and this important day continues. So let's give the teachers a round of applause. And I think it shows that there's nothing we can't accomplish when we work together, just as those brave revolutionaries did so many years ago. So it's an honor to be with you here today. To the kids, stay involved. We have a month-long celebration that talks about the importance of Evacuation Day. There are replica cannons from what it looked like in 1776. So please stay engaged. This is an important part of our shared story, and it's important that we continue passing this tradition on to the next generation. So I look forward to seeing you all again here next year. Thank you for being here. And I have the honor and privilege of introducing a former president of the South Boston Citizens Association who taught me everything I know about this time of year. Let's give a warm welcome to Bernie O'Donnell.
And I am still around. I remember working in the city years ago. The first thing the guys in the election department used to do was check the death notice to see how they moved up in the civil service list. But now what I do is I always check the Boston Herald because they have a shorter death notice list to make sure I'm around. As you know, a past president is the only time they let me speak because I go off the rails sometimes. But the Citizens Association is 142 years old. We're celebrating the 246th annual Evacuation Day ceremony. This monument behind us was one of the goals of the association when it was started in 1880. One was to preserve this community, fight for every inch of this community, but to preserve the historical landscape of this community, and as what we try to do every year, the civic lessons that we try to teach the young people in this community of how important this community is and how we respect this community. And hopefully we teach these kids how to respect each other and our elected officials. It's not easy being an elected official on this day. And I think we should all give a hand to the mayor, the state house officials and the city councils for being up here this year. I'm going to introduce next, then we'll get to the presentations. I want the kids to realize when we do the presentations this year, we want you to come up to the side, we'll give you the awards, and then we'll take the pictures all at once, okay? But first I want to introduce, when you're learning about history, especially today's age, we have so much alternative history. I'll give you a quick story. Bob Allison, who's been up here for years, past president of the Historical Society. I was in Williamsburg last year, and I've gone there a few times. It's very historic, a great place to be. Go in the William and Mary bookstore. As soon as I walk in the William and Mary bookstore, my son's hitting me. You know what? Bob Allison's book's the first book about the history of the American Revolution in the bookstore of William and Mary. I want to bring Bob up for another reason. You should all be exposed to different types of ideas. But if you want to read American history, read from the likes of Bob Allison and Doris Kearns Goodwin. Not from Marxist Leninists like Howard Zinn, my apologies to the BU band, and Nicole Hannah-Jones. These people have a perverted idea of American history where they take 10% of American history and make 90% up to fit their social, political, Marxist agenda. So at this time, I'd like to bring up really one of the great guys, does a great job, Bob Allison.
Great. Thank you, Bernie. It was really flattering when Bernie told me he had seen my book at the William and Mary bookstore. It would have been even more flattering if he said he had bought it.
My son did.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it's really one of the great things about being in South Boston and being an historian is I don't actually have to tell you anything about history because the elected officials do that and do a terrific job telling the story of Evacuation Day and telling the story, other stories about South Boston. And then, of course, we also have the students, 300 students who have written essays or made posters about Evacuation Day, about this important event. And they are the ones who will be carrying this story forward long after Bernie is not immortal, I'm sorry to say, and I am not, and we will be long gone, but the story will live on, thanks to the students who are telling it, who will tell it to their children, and their children will tell it, because it is really a monumental story. And as Bernie said, the Citizens Association was formed in 1880, and their real purpose was to build this monument on Dorchester Heights. And it was thanks to the South Boston Citizens Association that in 1898, the Commonwealth agreed to build a monument here, and the monument was built in 1901. Actually, it was dedicated in 1902. So it was 125 years after the events that brought the cannon here and forced the British out in the first American victory in the war. And now, in 2026, when the monument will be redone thanks to the National Park Service, that will be 125 years after the monument was first raised here on Dorchester Heights. And then if we can think into the future, 125 years from now, the monument will still be here. And we hope that there still will be students here telling the story of Evacuation Day and Dorchester Heights. And in fact, the dedication of the monument in 1902 was one of the great events in Boston's history. There was a parade. Actually, the parade started at Broadway Station, made its way all the way down Broadway and took a right onto what then was Q Street, is now Farragut Road, then came up 4th Street, looped around to 8th Street, and then looped back up to 5th Street and finished here. That is, the parade began at Broadway and finished here because the parade is about Evacuation Day, the events that happened here. And actually, the governor of the Commonwealth was the MC that day. Now, typically, Bernie is the MC. This year, we're blessed to have Michael Creasey as the MC. I want to tell you both, the position of governor is going to be open next year, so if you're interested. And the principal speaker was an historian, a noted historian, who also happened to be the senior senator from Massachusetts, Henry Cabot Lodge. Lodge, you may not know, had a PhD in history from Harvard University. And Lodge spoke about Dorchester Heights. Actually, the ceremony was held in the high school auditorium. They recognized then that you can't always count on the weather here on Dorchester Heights. Those of us who have been here for a long time, it's hard to remember a day that was this warm. Someone told me it actually was 1990, the last warm day for Evacuation Day. So that's maybe one reason there's a big crowd here. Those of us, the hardy few who typically are here, know this and remember this, and our toes aren't freezing. But Senator Lodge said in his remarks, "It may be doubted if any single event had more general effect on the course of the war than the expulsion of the British from the capital of New England." This was a big event. This was the real turning point in the war. If we didn't have March 17th, we would not have had July 4th. And Lodge also said that the evacuation of Boston ranks with Trenton and Saratoga, Kings Mountain and Yorktown. I believe those are all national park sites too now. This ranks with those as one of the decisive achievements of the war. And a new force had arisen, he said, a people in arms fighting not for a dynasty, but for themselves. And that's one of the recurring themes here in South Boston. I recall, well, if you wander over here to one of the waysides the Park Service has put in, you'll see a photograph from a 1938 Evacuation Day ceremony when one of the guests was Dennis Driscoll, who was 96 years old in 1938. He was a veteran of the Civil War. He was born in 1842, 2 years before the Bunker Hill Monument was dedicated. There still were men alive who had fought in the Revolution when Dennis Driscoll was born. And over here we have a replica cannon, and I remember when we dedicated the replica cannon, Ed Hamilton, a veteran of the Second World War, unveiled it, along with Andrew Lee, a boy who lives in the neighborhood. His father has served in the military in Desert Storm and in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. One of the other signal things about South Boston is the number of young people who serve in the military, who take up arms in the defense of their neighbors, their community, and their country. And though it's every parent's prayer that my child won't have to make that sacrifice, we know that the people of South Boston always are ready to answer the call of their country, their community, and their friends. And as Lodge said in conclusion, the evacuation of Boston was the first step in a movement which swept away privileges and made democracy a reality, and brought home the idea that power derives not from the hand of the state, but from the whole body of the community. And that's the recurring lesson of Dorchester Heights and Evacuation Day, and the reason we come back here every year to reflect on this. So I thank all of you for joining us. I especially thank the winners whom Bernie is about to introduce, and I want to thank also the National Park Service for having been since 1974, 1976 stewards of this special place. So thank you.
To make this move along, guys, I'm gonna name the winners and just line up here. Tommy will give you your awards and make sure the check is in there. It's not one of these checks is in the mail. All right, and then we'll take the pictures. All right, here we go. And congratulations to all of you. And I make one apology though. We're gonna change it next year. Poster contest is gonna change because I'm gonna split the grades up because it's really not fair for third graders to be with fifth graders, but hopefully I remember that. Mary Collins will make sure I remember it. All right, here we go. For first prize in essay, no winner to winning this award. She's won when she was in the 6th and 8th grade. From Ursuline Academy, Phoebe Alto. All right, 6th and 8th grade essays. First place, pardon me with these names, guys. Anshel Ready? There you go, come on up. Did I do that all right? Go right over here. Okay. Okay. Second prize, Audrey Bashan Bonson. Thank you. Third place, Kim Patel. I got that one all right, these guys, let me tell you, these were excellent essays. They really caught I want to give a couple of comments on some of them. On Phoebe's. Phoebe's was about Paul Revere and his role in the Revolution in Castle Island. I quote, Paul Revere's role in the American Revolution showed that ordinary citizens can make a difference, and it is necessary to speak up for the freedom and encourage others to do so as well. Great job. Audrey's essay, March 17th is St. Patrick's Day. It is not just that, it's Evacuation Day. It's the day the British left Boston. It's the day that marked the beginning. The beginning of, that all of the artillery had to be placed on Dorchester Heights without being noticed by the British. You can read my writing better than me. He woke up on March 5th, 1776, and had all the artillery aimed at them. The British decided to leave Boston.
Here, here.
I did. Hold on. Did I read that one? No. And Shell. Dorchester Heights is an important part of the fight for America's independence because it was the first major victory for George Washington in the Continental Army. Did I get all of them? All right. Thank you, guys. Now, I'd like to bring up, yeah, I got them. Thank you for the clear. All right. First place, Sophia Liberato from South Boston Catholic Academy. Second place, Gianna Blasi, St. Peter's Academy. Third place, Geneva Cornell. Genevieve, I'm sorry. Genevieve here? Come on, Genevieve. Okay, there were three third place winners. The other third place winner, Lucy Cantana, Canada. Oh, yeah. And Noel Flynn. Then I want to thank all the kids who participated. I want to thank the schools and the teachers, because this is what keeps the community alive and keeps the traditions alive. So every year we come up here, and I got to echo what other people have said. This is a great crowd. I want to thank, again, Congressman Lynch for getting the $25 million. I think some year we're going to have to put a plaque up here, because this is the second time. I've been up here long enough where Moakley gave money for this, for the monument, and Senator Lynch has said, but at least twice he's been able to advocate for this community and get this money for this great landmark, not only in South Boston, but in Boston and the whole state of Massachusetts. At this time, I'd like to bring up our MC, Michael, again. Are we going to do any pictures? All right. Michael, what you did?
We're good. Yes, yes. So we'll just tighten a little on the side. All right, folks, we'll sneak up. Oh. Good job, everybody. 3, 2, 1. Oh, okay. That's good. Sneak back one. Oh, so eyes right towards each other. Thank you. Right here, and then right here. Did you get it? Yep. Good, mate. Awesome. Good. Everyone get it? Go right in. Yep. Good? Thank you. Yeah. Luann, go ahead. The time limit, yeah, let's go. Tommy's Academy, right? All right. Going down the
I want to say hello to my friend.
Like we used to.
Can I say hello to the guy I know?
Can we just have one more applause for all the students for coming today, and their participation, and the teachers and the parents for coming. Thank you so much for making our day. It's really wonderful. And I think we all owe Bernie and Bob Allison such our thanks and gratitude for what you've organized year after year. So thank you to everybody that's organized the essay contest. Lots of pictures being taken. So. So I'd like to now introduce the National Park Service Regional Director from Philadelphia, Gay Vitsky. Gay has been the Regional Director for a little over 5 years now. She manages over 83 national parks and programs from Maine to Maryland. She has been a tremendous supporter of parks here in Boston and brings some exciting news to share with you today regarding Dorchester Heights National Monument. Gay?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, Michael, Mayor Wu, elected officials, students, and the many community organizations we have here today that have contributed to the program and to the stewardship of Dorchester Heights. I'm honored to be with you on this very special day of commemoration in Boston, as we recall the bravery and ingenuity of the patriots that helped to forge our country. Current world events remind us that the fight for freedom continues. With all that's in the news today, it makes us appreciate even more why in Boston we still continue to commemorate this day, this act of heroism by citizens at this place high on a hill overlooking the city of Boston. Here in Boston, almost 250 years ago, patriots gathered to challenge British rule. They protested the Boston Massacre and taxation without representation. They took up arms at Lexington and Concord. And a year after the Battle of Bunker Hill, they watched 150 vessels filled with British soldiers and American loyalists sail from Boston Harbor for the last time. The evacuation of Boston by the British in March of 1776 was a key moment in the struggle for freedom that produced this new nation. Boston National Historical Park, including Dorchester Heights, is one of over 400 plus national parks throughout the nation, set aside to preserve the natural and cultural landscapes that reflect our nation's heritage. The National Park Service cares for these very special places on behalf of the American people. They belong to you, and we all have a responsibility to be good stewards of these very treasured places. Dorchester Heights has major infrastructure deficiencies, and they need repair. In 2020, Congress passed historic conservation legislation known as the Great American Outdoors Act. And I want to specifically acknowledge Senator Markey and Congressman Lynch's leadership in that effort. The bill, the Great American Outdoors Act, established the National Parks and Public Lands Legacy Restoration Fund, supported by revenue from energy development. And this bill provides up to $1.9 billion per year over 5 years to make significant enhancements in national parks and other public lands to ensure their preservation and provide opportunities for recreation, education, and the enjoyment of this and future generations. The Great American Outdoors Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and other construction funding sources are part of a concerted effort to address the extensive maintenance backlog of national parks. So I'm very excited to announce today that Boston National Historical Park will be receiving $25 million to restore Dorchester Heights. The project will include the full restoration of the 1902 commemorative marble tower behind me and the surrounding landscape to its former grandeur, allowing visitors to experience this historic place for generations to come. The rehabilitation is expected to take 18 months and will include structural upgrades to the tower, including dismantling and reconstructing the upper levels with new steel supports and full restoration of the interior and exterior masonry, foundation, superstructure, roof, interior stairs, plumbing, and electrical systems. The landscape restoration will address public safety concerns and see the construction of new retaining walls, accessible walkways and ramps, stairs, handrails, and stormwater drainage systems. The existing lighting will be refurbished and retrofitted with new energy-efficient fixtures. The inscribed interpretive panels at the entrance to the site will be upgraded to granite, and granite markers in the lawn will mark the corners where the 1776 fortifications once stood. Our goal is to have the project completed by the 250th anniversary of the founding of our nation, and to bring renewed interest in history of this place and the nation's historic sites, both here in Boston and around the nation. Before I close, I want to take a moment to recognize the extraordinary staff of the National Park Service stationed here at Boston National Historical Park. You are doing an incredible job, and I know will continue to do so. Thank you. And as always, it's impressive to see the long and continuous tradition of commemoration at this historic site, upheld by this community. I thank you so much for honoring us today with the tradition and with your presence here. Happy Evacuation Day. Thanks.
Thank you, Gay. So much appreciated. That's a lot of zeros in a check. I think it's fitting that we end our program today with a good friend of the park, with a good friend of the other park on the other side of the fence that is now joined with Dorchester Heights Monument, No Man's Land. Michael Dowling is the artistic director for Spoke. It's an organization that uses art to bring together young people from across the city in an atmosphere that fosters collaboration and dialogue about many issues. Michael, thank you for your leadership and working with youth over these years, and thank you for your partnership in Dorchester Heights. Michael?
Thanks, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Happy Evacuation Day. It's really great to be on the other side of the fence today. We started our work at No Man's Land 26 years ago, and in 2026 we'll be celebrating 30 years of reclaiming that land. And it began with this concept of each of us has a story. I have a story, Nick has a story, Bob has a story, Erin has a story, right? And we have a story together. Our story. And maybe even more significantly, we're all part of the story of our humanity, our shared experiences, our dreams, our hopes, our sorrows, the place where belief systems, politics, ideas disappear, and we're just there, person to person, there for each other. We feel we belong. Probably the best gift we give another person is to just listen and really mean it. Not interrupt them with, oh, I had something just like that happen to me. but stay with them. Share their joy, share their sorrow. We're launching a new project today, and we're actually looking for 100,000 voices of the residents of Boston. You'll see over here, and some of you may have gotten a little placard with a piece of fabric on it, an old rag, right? We're asking people to write a short story of belonging on those pieces of cloth, bring them back to the table here. We're going to sew them together into long strands, and the strands will be braided together then, amplifying and uniting our stories, right? We hope by 2026 to have a rope, a braid that is 4 miles long, the distance from Fort Hill to Dorchester Heights, commemorating that last haul of those cannon. So it is an absolute joy to be here today. I'm a blow-in in South Boston. I've only been here 44 years, and I feel like I belong. And I think that today is such a beautiful testimony to each of us belong. You know, from our mayor, to the protesters, to the residents, to the newcomers, right? We all have a voice in this place we call home. Please consider adding your voice to our new project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you to the members of Spoke for taking this on. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Greg. So to conclude today's ceremony, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's attended. Thank you again to everybody that's helped to co-host and support this event year after year. Today has been a really momentous occasion, and it's really wonderful to see so many people. What I'd like to do to conclude the ceremony today is to ask our speakers to come over to the monument next to the Minuteman there, and I wanted to thank the Lexington Minuteman as well. Thank you for being here once again. And we're gonna have a wreath-laying ceremony, a musket fire, and then we will conclude with the playing of taps while the American flag is lowered. And I hope you can all join us for coffee and some refreshments under the tent there after the wreath-laying ceremony. Thanks again for all coming.
First section, think ready. Present. Fire! Second section, think ready. Present. Fire! Third section, think ready. Present. Fire! Shoulder, pilot. Right about, face. Reset, arms. Order, arms, listen, shoulders. Muscle company, shoulder, right left. Right about, face. Secure, arms.